Отличная команда.
Okay, hi everyone. So thanks for coming. So today we have a reading of wonderful poets in Krasnoper. So I know this work like for quite some time now. So that's her latest book in Russian. So like you could like live through it, and this is her latest English speaking book. Yeah. So like she writes in Russian, German, and English, and she mixes languages a lot. And in her poetry, so when I first encountered her poetry, it was really an interesting insight for me. So because like she mixes, she uses a lot of wordplay in her poems, and so, but also there is a preface in this book, so written by another poet, Nikki, and he says that Ina is one of those poets that speaking out against the war as well, or like even if it's not explicit, but like you can see like from Ina's text that no war. Like this text couldn't support no war, absolutely not the current one, and so but it's still appearing luckily in Russia. Yes, so like this book appeared in Russia in Новое литературное обозрение, so one of the last oppositional editions. Yes, so you could say probably like
I mean, it's one of the
independent ones. Yes,
most important humanitarian or humanities. Sorry, sometimes press. But I mean, you could say it is oppositional, but it's not super open. The opposition it tries to go around also.
They do what they can, obviously. Okay, so like well, I will just give the floor to you, and so we're lucky to have you. Please.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for coming. So I'll share some of my insights into my work and translingual as a term, and I'll go through Russophone poems a bit later, but you will see. The point of departure of my poetry was Germany. Parting from the country of my birth made me into a poet. Early in life, I chose contemporary dance, its conceptual branch. Instead of fixed movement, it usually works with structured improvisation, a score, a multimedia performance that persistently asks what it communicates, engage in a different combination of tools. After long immersion in the life of immigration, my Russian began to shift. To write was to note this process down. I can say that I no longer fully hold my first language, but carry it provisionally within my own linguistic system and situation. 2 years after that, my practice in English followed. I'd say the materiality of my Russophone poems is denser, more object-like. Morphological possibilities blend with physical recollections. The practice relies on assembling the language in you. My English language poems look for an in-between space. They try to address, fill the sentence, take things literally. Sometimes I try to morph English. Language choice and positionality are reflected in the poems. Hi, I'm your reader. I'm in reading your work. I stay on my side of the lane. I outline what is here on the line, in the landscape of your text, in the scope of vermeiden. Vermissen, misreading, mistreating, misreacting, vermischen. I get mixed up. Я теряюсь в твоем тексте. Я теряю ориентиры. Poetics или поэтика, поэтики множественного или единственного, fourth person, singular, fourth person, they, Versehen. Aus Versehen habe ich hier was anderes gesehen. Gerät, geredet, gerät, vehicle. Art as vehicle. vehicular language as opposed to язык перемещения, язык колесо, языку звук, свыкнуться тут, sich gewöhnen, останусь здесь, взвесь, взболтать, пассеровать, взболтнуть, вывалить, шлепая, тащись на шлейп, тау, за птичкой. So this poem is included in my collection published by Delis Books, a Houston-based press. Distanz is German for distance, Tanz is dance, and it's one of the most multilingual poems in this book. You can see that fragments in the inset languages, Russian and German, are glossed. Generally, glosses don't always serve as explanations or direct translations. They can also extend into a landscape, testing some autonomy and prolonging the relation to the main body of text. This is west of time, this is east of time, here you go south of time, there north. North went south, east, stayed Ezekiel, stayed Isaac, searched Iskal, Iskali. Out of the mountain comes the sun. Before it goes off the rails, everyone searched for the sun. It had to be found, it had to be fine. Before it went the other direction, who was abducted, A or B? Кто остался? Who was stunned by an asa from the land of Oz? Озверевшая оса не осталась. She left to the place where the sun didn't stay, couldn't stand staying. Osa is Vespe. Vespe on the western side of the east-west axis, X of time, ox of time, crush, ear, and or of time. S is loud in the Wüste, dead side of sight, where all went. Seeking Isaac is oak, is Avsa, is was, Zov of time. Call me. So if a translational gesture is included in the main body of text, like state, iskal, search iskal, or Zov call, then I don't gloss. Emergency poetry, merged in poetry, merged into poetry, parted with, restricted by the poetry, repeated by, replaced by poetry, repressed, hidden, sealed with poetry, sealed by the tongue, departed from the tongue, вылизанный by the tongue, выставленный наружу, упрятанный за тряпкой, за трапом, trap. This poem is from 2022, and at that point continuing to write was quite challenging. So the majority of poems in this collection are clearly English-based. One poem works against glossing, both conceptually and practically, because it talks about if translingual is actually if Russian can be included in the translingual discussion, and often it is not. It's more European languages or the languages in Latin alphabet. And I won't read it because I really depend on on the precision in pronouncing. So I try to be effective about the poems that I choose. Native speakers don't traipse and trip. They trudge a trunk, they stick with nature, they stay naive, at one with sticking. If they move away and remove, they turn into notation speakers, or else novelty speakers, or else spooks and notionals. They bear their notes as instruments. They drop, the rudiments of root nativity. Who will pick up those droppings? They build on, drill, and cry Kruskot, cats. They say shibboleth with a sh and keep going through borders. They put on language Anzug and find Umzuge, a drag, notation speaker, aka notional, world emotional, good at gratitude, wise owl of acknowledgements. Speaker of notes, speaker packer, they packed off, they couldn't bear it. They pick up where they left off. So umzug, umziehen means moving house, переезд, but ziehen is to pull, тянуть. Anzug is a costume. Kruskot is a greeting that involves God, but it's spelled with G. Cat, yes, kot is also excrement in German, cat in Russian. So this is the only poem that I translated myself from English to Russian, or I edited both versions, back and forth. Носители языка никуда не несутся. Потягивая лямку, они остаются с природой, выносливыми, в единстве с, просто остаются. Но если они выдвинулись и отодвинулись, они становятся носителями нотации, или носителями новизны, или песцами и переносчиками. Поигрывая на струнах, они носятся со своими записками, написывают и набрасывают вокруг рудименты родного. Кто подберет, этот поймет. Они надстраивают, дырявят и выкрикивают крюс-кот. Котики, они шипят, как полагается, и продолжают проходить через границы. Они надевают языковые анцуги и находят, что переезд затянулся. Носители нотации, они же переносчики с ноющим сердцем, преуспевающие в благодарностях. Где аукнется, там и откликнется, докладчики заметок, четенько выметающие, они смылись отсюда. Не вынесли и берутся за работу в том месте, где остановились. So after this poem, I've marked for myself the concept of a notation speaker as someone who has moved out of the cozy area of the native, someone who transports their language while recording the changes that occur in the process. This helps me reflect the poetic language as somewhat foreign or estranged in relation to the language of communication, and consider the possible interpretation of the translingual. So translingual could be text by authors using more than one language or a language other than their primary one. However, a Berlin-based German poet, Uliana Wolf, stresses that poetic distortion of the mother tongue or monotongue can also be achieved by ostensibly monolingual authors. It's an aesthetic principle, not a biographical one. Such texts can be monolingual on the surface, but they have undergone a history of other tongueness or of translational transpositions that make them translingual at heart, or root, or rot, i.e. dislocated between languages. Eugene Ostashevsky notes that the poem needs to come from a language contact zone, which is to say it needs to include the languages in its negative space, other languages. He also mentions metalinguistic concerns as one of the markers. Translingual poetry should study how things are changed by differences in linguistic framing. It should not talk about things without talking about things. Normalerweise muss man нормальные слова usage. Usually I should have a clue what words to use. They are cueing us to be klug. Steht Krug auf eine Wiese, wissend. Someone is at ease with words when they release them orderly. Orderly. Лишка eng. Unleash. Маленькая. Usually words come in clusters. They are sculpted into a snowman, who is also an omen, Sophia says. She's fond of anomalies. A form of a norm is enormous, then a mouse runs by. Usually I get lemons or the limits of words brought to imitation. Normally I have to correct. Usually I need to come up with more ordinary speech. Speech in Russian is almost bitter without go. It leaks out unbidden until someone puts up a wall. Someone bitter. I agree with most of Uliana and Eugene's takes on translingual sound and sense across languages often cross your mind simultaneously. In the process of picking, the speech flow is slowed down, stumbling on formally similar words. Punning and more generally paranomasia are in focus. Also, intralingually, it can be a translingual marker as it foregrounds the materiality of a language and loosens the function of words as signs. In proximity, they create semantic entanglement. So far, I've published 2 collections in Russian. My primary device has to do with spatiality, exploring the spaces between phonemes and words. Some of these poems aren't translatable. О времени хлопушка, о времени подружка, о времени нет трушка, о времени ни капли шу, протерлась. Время дыры плещут, глухари щебещут, щуки выплескали свои скалы, а скалы оплескались, а плеск взыскались раз, через 2, да через строчку, через мочку уха уставились глаза. А глаз ко времени оплеска, оплеуха, опрыскиватель напрямую в дальний угол. О головы пустое жало, сбежало молоко прокисло, кисло сладостью зависло. О висло времени, о весло, овса полыни полного ведра. О брысь, о брас, о ба, опачки листочки. Это было, когда бы было о пра. Опрашиваю я тебя с вопроса первый, напред, последний, пред, угадать, предатель. Передари предмет мотанья, да, как же, как уже, скукожившись, шеренга, шигада, да буду буквицу сюда, допрыгнуть до привычного станца. I realized later that stanza, could also connect me to stanza. So some poems are translated, and for that I usually work with a collaborator. This one is translated by me and Elina Alter. Дорогой человек, ходишь ты чего поверх? Дорогой человек, ты чего тут ходишь? Дорогой уж local человек, вектор потерял, пути спутал. Дорогой человек, руки пустые. Дорогой человек, человек дорогой, дорогой ни одной ногой. Дорогой голый человек, голень прибери. Дорогой глыба человек, ты не человек совсем. Дорогие сети человека, не было на вас сроду. Дорогой неродной человек, честь имею. Дорогой рыба, дорогая рыба, рыба. Дорогая рыба человек, утка человек, живчик человек, гичвок. Наоборот. Дорогая сторона неродного человека, оборотная. Дорогой оборотень человека, зубом грецкий орех. Дорогие зубр, зебра и рысь. Дорогой сурок и ночной сырок. Дорогой рог человека, память не пропьешь. Дорогая почка и сучок, дорогой щеночек. Дорогая ночка, нычка, чело века. Доброго человека, дорогой человек, доброго имени из пустого. Дорогой испутанный человек из спуска. Дорогой покатый человек без плеча. Should I read the translation? Yes. Dear person, what grounds are you on here? Dear person, what are you going here for? Dear presently proximal person, you've lost your compass rerouting. Dear person, empty handling. Dear person, dearest, resting one foot at the rest area. Dear bare naked person, bear that away. Will you? Dear pale person, hardly a person anyway. Dear scope of person, haven't cited your sad sins. Dear estranged person, an honor to show you the door. Dear fish person, foul person, beer person, Marston, read backwards the other way. Dear estranged person's flip side, beside you where person dear, sink your teeth in a nutshell. Dear saber-tooth, zebra and lynx. Dear yak and midnight snack. Dear person's doom, the core of your memory remains intact. Dear peep and pot, dear poppy, posterior person, good person's greatest person, good name in vain. Dear Freightenant, it's a constructed word. Freightenant, person vanishing through the fire exit. Dear person off sight, no shoulder to offer. The next one is translated by me and Eugene. So you see an attempt to work with more than one language. Slovce is the diminutive of word, but tse is Ukrainian for this. This tse join yate, I need to create new subjects. In English version I brought French set. The bond is constructive, but then I could develop it further with interlingual paronymy like German I for egg and multiple uses of English set and site. Вначале было слово, и слово было словце, и слово упало. Потом было ядце, и ядце ходила по ядце, за ядце, и ядце укрывалась. Потом возникла тыца, тыца казалась хорошим, но таким не было. Для кого-то тыца было ядце, но так и так они пинались. Потом слово пришло на помощь ядце и тыца, но они не стали аниться, потому что для аниться нужно не слово или не то слово. Пока слово находилось в падении, я ударила голову, заблокировав взгляд. Взгляд был еще хуже слова, потому что он кончался. Взгляд обнаруживал и называл. Творились и взгляд, и слово, сыпались поставщики. Постовые выглядывали из своих постовых мест. Никто не выл, Или его и не было слышно. Было слышно, заполните форму. Заполните форму. Вы же еще человек. А я нет. Я яце. Я цокая по полу хожу, сметаю на своем пути. Табуретку двигаю, и она скрипит. И она скрипит. Скрывает разъединение в одном месте. Потом в другом месте разъединение идет от слова. Единый. Единый был сначала. Ел себя, потом ел яйца, цеплялся. Цепко брался за руки. Smashed. In the beginning was a word, and the word was said word, and the word has fallen. Then there was said I. Said I, walked over said I, and after said egg, and was hid. Then said you appeared, and it appeared to be good, but said two, it wasn't. For some said you was said I, but so it went. They were upset. Then a word came to set them straight, but they couldn't be set so. For to set them, no word will do. Doesn't even begin to describe it. Whilst the word was a fallen, an apple of the eye hit the head, blocking eye sight. The sight was worse than the word. At the end of the sight, it came to an end. Sight put the inside outside, it fell for. Sight and word fell, it was full all around. Suppliers ran out of supplements. Sentries were set to look out of entry boxes. Not one said a word, or it wasn't heard. One could hear. Fill in the form, fill in the form. You are still a human being. Me, not though. I'm setting out, sweeping out of my way, dragging a stool, and it creaks. It does creak. Hides a crack here and there. A crack is disunion. It comes from the word one. One was in the beginning. One ate, one sold, and ate seti, clung, cleaved, bound hands with hands. Раскованы. So you can see this and some other of my work on my Sigma account. I can recite some of my work both in English and Russian, and this allows me to combine mediums and experiment with dance as a mode of presence alongside the poems. If I didn't have the screen, you would be more focused on that. But we are used to be attached to the screens. How long is the letter I? How lonely is the letter I? How long is the sound Q? How deep is the sound? How deep is the sea? Have you seen the letter I? Did it show up? Did it show down? How long is the down time of a down in letter I? Of a drown in letter, of a drawn letter, of a gesture of letter to the left, of a left letter to stay unattended, unended, in a long sounding ungestured letter, in a let be letter, in a let it liter, in a letter trying to tail lettre, in pursuing the letter, in catching the letter, at its and having consulted with a tailor. I'll skip the German one. I wrote this poem in February 2024 after Alexei Navalny was killed in response to his body being withheld from his relatives. It is the end of the day what matters. At the end of the day, time is not there for us. It is not there for them. Time belongs to a body of work to be dealt with by dawn. The business is sketchy. It's a draft. Skipping a couple of days, time is of the essence, but it runs off course, has rolled for that course. Taucht ein in die Täuschung, in the name and mire of hope. Yes, and I'll finish, since most of you understand Russian, right? I'll finish with one longer one without translation again. Белый, 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 белый свет. Белый, 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 белый мир. Белый, 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 белый выпуск. Белый, 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 белый спуск. Белый, былой, белый, былой, дивный, чудный мир. Спорный, спудный, нудный, справді, с правдой, кривдой, мирный, белый мир. Смирно, мир, смертно, мир, смертно, с мирой, смертно, мерой, мерный мир. Где-то мир, где-то дыры, где-то смертно, где-то март. Где он? Март. С мерой март, с миром по миру. Пошел, шли на март, шли марать, шли на морд. Морда, мата, мата, мирт. Где он? Мир. Где он? Мирт. Стрёмно, мерный. Стрима, та, пряма, та, мера, та, мира, то. Мира, ток, мир, не то. Не давай, не дает. Белый, белый, белый отклик. Белый, белый, белый отзыв. Звать как мир, звать как нас, как на нос, нацепить. Цепкий цедит белый мир. Обернись, оглянись, поклонись, по колено мира, вой, вой на во, новый мир. Мир с тобой, за тобой, за таив. Белый, белый мир рычит, промычит, помаячит моя той. Моя мир, той ли мир, той ли стебель беломира. Бела, вой, бега, вой, по берлоге скачет мир. Мы с тобой, зарычав, прокричав, чавка миром, час не той, чай помои, ты отмой, бело миром. Покрути, подрасти, под калитку, беловат, маловат, бело мир, без с тобой, без тяни, не тяни, Беломир, не вытягивай собою, отмотав, сотри, зарытый, Беломир, подмети, ты отмой, ты не мой, он не наш, он не сажа, белый мир, он не наша же, она той, она этой, ай на пару, белый мир, мир устал, мир сопел, мира точит, мира мир, мера та, мера той, мер они, на безмерный, обрани, обрати, обкрути, спусти, не спускай, отпускай, отпусти, белый, белый. Thank you. So, yeah, we could have a good discussion if you have some. Could be either comments or questions.
I don't speak German at all, and my Russian is pretty rusty, I have to say, but I love the way that you use sound and the ways that words, mean different things, and the way that two words put together in one language can mean another word in another language is such a fun way to play, I think, with meaning in language. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's just
По-английски или по-русски? Your English? Yes, probably.
Easy.
Well, I was sorry, I missed the very beginning, so maybe you already talked about this, but my name is Maria. I'm a professor here in the department. I was wondering, since you cited Vidensky in one of your poems, and obviously this kind of experimentation with the material of language kind of harkens back to that. I was wondering if, my first question is whether your own experiments with the phonemes and the sounds have given you new insights on what the Obiru poets were doing.
Well, I'm not a scholar, so.
Yeah. But I'm sure you've read it and they're inspired by them. Just at practical level. I'm not a Slavist, so I'm just curious.
I'm curious to go back and forth, for example, with Yelizavetovna Tsakanova's work. I mean, it's not a very old, but I think it kind of proceeds
in the tradition.
Yeah, in the tradition. But somehow for me, I came up with this method on my own. Like I didn't read many of the poets back then at first, so it literally was about like how my language was changing and how to like touch it somehow anew. And then I started to read, or I mean I had some basic kind of school education, of course, but then I started to read more of these authors. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes maybe with Khlyabnikov, sometimes I really like see. Okay, like I have the feeling why you went into this word now, but yeah. So.
No, but I mean, I think I guess my second question is you cited Ostashevsky's line about the poem, translingual poem, needs to come from a language contact zone. And I think that's really interesting, but also these contact zones can look so different. And I'm wondering what yours look like, right? There could be contact zones between dialects. So I think that where you were dealing with like a new working class proletarian culture and the like classical Russian, there's this contact zone. But like Nabokov, who famously did a lot of translingual puns, the contact zone between Russian and French, his Russian and French and English was more like the aristocratic concert of Europe, where all the languages had these deep histories. So I love his interlingual puns, like mystic at the Malinki Mist. Do you know that one? Nabokov has some really amazing translingual puns. Well, but but like mystic at the mind he missed is a good one. But for him, the contact zone between languages looked so different than today. The contact zone between Russian, or the contact zone could be linguistic colonialism, or the contact zone could be a clash of civilizations between languages, or war, right? And I'm wondering, like, what are the contact zones that shape your poems? Are they conversations? Are they media? Are they mundane activities and living your daily life?
Yeah,
What are those?
I would say the ones that you just mentioned, like the colloquial material and idioms. I work a lot with them, either taking them literally or mixing them. So yeah, I would say the everyday conversation is my main source.
Okay, and then do you feel like you use, I'm just curious, do you use like English and German and Russian? Are they each associated with different
Social kind of?
Yeah, like what are they for you? Like how do you
Yeah.
encounter them?
I think with English it's like the most as the most understood language.
The lingua franca.
Yeah, it's
In Berlin.
also in Berlin. Yeah, it's more. They are more direct. Like my English and German language poems are more direct, and they really try to speak to people. And also, like I reflect on the language itself within the poems, and how do I build a phrase? So somehow my position as a not imperfect speaker is included in it. So with German and Russian have a bit more similarity structure-wise. Like I'm really obsessed with prefixes in Russian, and German can allow me that as well. But then in vocabulary, German and English are closer, and also the alphabet, and even sometimes like some words are written the same but mean different things.
So it's like your path is through kind of intimate home settings, institutional settings, and then these
Yeah.
kinds of public events, and this is how you kind of.
Yeah, and with Russian, like I feel not so many people work with Russian translingually, and I feel like I need to have this agenda to bring it into the translingual discussion. I prefer to perform English poems more because I don't know, they are a bit simpler and easier to remember. Also because I've been a performance artist, so somehow English is like something that holds the space for me often.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I love Russian poems on the page because
You know, my dad was a philologist who knew 20 languages, some actively, some passively, but he could read Persian and Lithuanian and so on, Hebrew and so on and so forth. And when I would come home from school, he would say, "Белка, снимай копытца." Это какие копытца? And there is a professor here, Keith Livers, who is the only person who actually knew the meaning of this old Russian word for shoes, обувь. Копытца означали обувь, да? Вот, мы до сих пор используем это слово, да? То есть тут, конечно, не транслингвизм, но тем не менее.
Отбросить копытца.
Да, не говорите.
Как раз, Белла, это интересно просто, что регистры языка могут быть тоже очень далеки друг от друга. И
Не
между
говорите.
ними контакт, это такой же, как контакт между разными языками. Потому что язык, как говорится, это диалект с армией. Так что вот
Вы знаете,
отчуждение слов внутри языка тоже контакт между ними.
Мой русский дедушка Михаил Федорович родился в 1892 году. Бабушка в 1902, поэтому
Ну
все
да.
дореволюционное, так сказать, творчество они в меня вложили. Я читала книги из старых сундуков, пахли там и, старинные книги и так далее, понимаете?
Да, да.
Вот. Трудно представить, но с 19 века, я шучу.
Интересно.
So I'm going to ask this in English. I was really interested in how you locate and dislocate in this translingual process. Can you talk a little bit about your performance art and how it fits with some of these tools? So the tools of incantation, the tools of alliteration. I was really interested in the set poem, the like sort of setting space and moving spatially, and how you're combining words from different languages, including French and Ukrainian, aside from German and English. Just visually, it's really interesting how you lay it out spatially and then how you read it. But I'm interested in what is the element or component for your performance? How is this a dance performance? Or like how is this intended to locate or dislocate the audience in the act of performance and reading?
Yeah, so maybe I cannot really call them dance performances, but like more interactions or interventions. And I'm interested in the contact with the audience, so
right.
with the space, so that's why I walk around. It very much depends on the setting. The more loose it is, the better I can interact. Like the table isn't really helping.
Yeah, it's a barrier.
Yeah. I feel when I write it has a similar vibe. Like I throw. So if performance is a gesture or impulse, something that happens in space in real time, in writing, it's more like throwing words or syllables and then like looking for spaces in between and looking for some consequence until like, okay, I feel like it's working, so it's becoming more like an object. So in this sense setting, for me it's quite important how that I can see a poem at once often. Like if it's a one page poem, I mean some are longer, but if it's a one page that somehow I see it like as one.
So it's appearing to you in one vision? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So then I would adjust also the lines accordingly. I mean, it's a negotiation. It's also important that they are written closer to the way how I read them, so that you also have this experience. But also, it's important how it is as one.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's your performance actually reminded me very much of what I saw in documentary reels about Mayakovsky, because he also said I cannot write poetry without walking. You know, he actually walked into Texas from Mexico, crossing Rio Grande before he ended up in New York and other American cities. You know, and it very much reminded me of that vibe.
Okay.
He had, but what do I know? But one of my students, who was an American undergrad, she actually found some of his poems that were not translated into his American cycle, and she translated them into English. And that was a rare find. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I think there are more physical poets in general, the ones that are more present in space, both when they write and when they recite.
Do you write by hand?
Both.
And type?
Yeah.
Does one language, do you do one language type and the other one by hand, or?
No, I mean, it's just different practices. So I think when I write on my smartphone, it's more immediate when I'm like around, like somewhere. So I often don't sit to write. I have to be inside a situation to start writing. But I also have this like automatic writing practice on paper, and then sometimes it comes to some fragments become poems. And I do that in color as well. So this color kind of practice, it reflected my automatic writing practice at one point.
It's like a synesthetic kind of. You pick different colors.
Yeah. So it can be decision driven, like here because of the translation, or it can be more.
So what is this Krasnoznania Kruzhuk in St. Petersburg?
Yeah.
Is mentioned here?
Yeah. Just some poets, many of them related to Translate journal. We had some meetings, but I mean, I never lived in St. Petersburg for a long time. It was just like I was visiting, and then during COVID, we had some online Zoom meetings. Like Romana Sminkin, Nikita Sungatov,
All of them
Yeah, yeah. All of these are in German.
But where do you live? You
In
live
Berlin
in
for 15 years, yes.
Oh, wow.
I was really intrigued by what you said about how Russian is more, it's more important for you, how words to convey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I also noticed like while we were reading also like, I just read your poems before, so like I really was really glad to experience like your performance aspect of it. And I wonder if you like saying that like English poems, and I also saw that like in English you make this small performance type reading, yeah. I wonder if it's, what does it tell about the languages or like your feeling of the languages? Is it like, could we say that like Russian for you is more like visual or like, and English more about spoken word or like, is it fair guess or like, do you feel it's somewhere, something else about this?
How they are on the page, I don't think it's only about visual, but it's also about separating myself from the poem. And with the English ones, I think there is a lot of communication because it also comes from my communication content zone. So like then it's more fun to do them with people in the actual space. Like in Russian, I think I remember 4 poems in total, and in English like 10, and it's growing.
And you're doing all the translation yourself, or is Zhenya?
With Zhenya, with Selina, Alter, yeah, I can do a draft myself, but I don't trust myself fully.
Okay.
And I mean, it's always nicer someone with a better English to work with it.
Yeah, I was noticing some of the words as you're translating them, like stayutsa, they're staying, they're sticking.
Yeah.
You know, the translation is actually different at the beginning of the poem than it is at the end of the poem.
Yeah.
With the words, and sometimes you can use different words in this. It's the same word in Russian, but you're using it with 2 different English meanings.
Yeah.
So, something like that.
Yeah, translation is generally, I think, more fun if you allow some freedom,
Yeah.
especially with the text like mine when they are really so dependent on language.
And which of these is your favorite? Can we just ask you? Do you have a
Which language or?
some of the which is your favorite poem of the ones that you read? Do you have one that you present a lot?
Letter I. I'm
Okay.
permanently reading it. Also, like this is super easy in bars or in any space.
It looks like a bar napkin. That's a compliment.
Yeah. In Russian, I love like all of them. Like Дорогой человек is actually the same title of the book.
I like this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
that's really cool.
Do you speak Russian in everyday life at all, or?
With my partner, yes. I think I think in the mix of Russian and English. I speak to myself in the mix.
But you speak mostly every day outside the home. You speak mostly in German or English?
Both, but English more, unfortunately. You need a lot of motivation if you want to improve your German in Berlin. But I even have poems in German, like a couple published. I mean, this is mixed, but it's still far from being a German poet, a German language poet.
It's Russisch zu übersetzen.
When you sit down and you start writing, do you feel just called to a phrase in a certain language and that's what sets you off? Or-
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, usually I have like a first line, and sometimes it's in like a pun or multilingual.
Oh, love puns.
Yeah.
I made puns in German and French as well, and that's how my second husband proposed to me. Because I made the first pun in German and the second in French. And he knew 5 languages, so he could actually appreciate that.
That's what you need.
runs in the
Yeah,
family.
because I come from Siberia and people was like, oh, you came all the way to Texas, how come, Bella? And he, 6th generation Texan, though professor here at UT, you knew him, Stephen,
Yes,
right?
I do.
And he said, how did you come here? I mean, what happened? And I said, Drang nach Osten.
Boy.
And I know, kind of politically incorrect, but anyways. But but he looked at me in a different way, like, oh my goodness, turns out his dad was also professor of German, so we read the same books, you know.
Nach Osten.
Yeah, Drang nach Ost.
Not-
Yeah, that's
Or-
awful.
Osten.
Yeah, but it's not even Hitler who invented that. That was the area geographers, political geographers,
It's
as
a
we know.
historical phrase.
Mm.
No, it's-
Von Ratzel and so on and so forth. But anyways, we need to go to Ukraine because how can we feed the German people without the Ukrainian wheat, right? Because Hitler was a vegetarian, and so he said, "Well, we need Ukraine."
What?
But anyway.
Bella.
No, but it's true. It's written in books.
lecture. I didn't know, it's good. I mean, I'm always
I
learning
didn't
so
know
much.
that, yeah.
Building off, so.
42 years of teaching.
I know.
So like you like from Siberia and like you are from Bashkortostan,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wonder like how does it play? How important is it to you? Like, where are you from originally? How
yeah.
how do you reflect it in your poems?
So it is a multilingual area somehow, but Tatar is more present in Ufa than Bashkort. But also there are quite some ethnicities living in the Republic. But yeah, I'm a poet really recently. So I guess Berlin has much more influence on my work in this sense. I try to support some of my colleagues. For example, do you know this poet Dinara Rasuleva from Berlin? She's from Tatarstan, and she combines Tatar, Russian, English, and German. And they actually just published a book in Finland. Eugene Ostashevsky is the editor of this series called Zdvig. So you can order that book if you'd like to know more about like other languages inside Russia and how could poets work with that. Myself, I feel I'm quite centered in these 3 languages. I also lived in Portugal, so sometimes a bit of Portuguese or French come in.
So your family wasn't like speaking like Tatar or
No,
Bashkir?
my family, I have a mixed ethnicity, Russian and Jewish, so neither of them spoke. Even my father doesn't speak Yiddish, so.
You should add it to the mix. It's close
Yeah.
to German. It's close to
Yeah.
German. It's really nice.
But you know, in the Soviet Union, in Birobidzhan, they used to issue a newspaper, Zavedezh Gameland, and my dad used to receive it from Birobidzhan, so he was reading Yiddish as well.
Thank you.
So
So I'll try to leave the books to your
Yeah.
shelves.